Hello, welcome to Wanderlusting Lawyer. I've been saying I would make some more videos about the Camino Inglés. I found that the resources about this Camino are still fairly lacking on the internet, and I have a lot of good information to share. I do have, I think, a really useful video out there about the different itineraries, like whether you have 5 nights or 10 nights to do your Camino Inglés, how you can break that down. I did 4 nights, so 5 days walking. It was doable, but a couple days were extremely challenging. I would have benefited physically from an extra night or two, um, especially because I got stung by a hornet and that was very painful. But there were towns that I absolutely love that I wish I could have spent a night in and just gotten to see the local flavor a little bit more. So will have a video coming out soon of every place I stayed on the Camino Inglés and kind of giving you my thoughts about them and a little bit of a ranking, if you will. But today I wanted to do something a little bit more logistically simple and straightforward, but necessary is how do you even get to start the Camino Inglés? Where do you start? How do you get there? And actually, there are two different places you can start the Camino Inglés. There is the place that the majority of pilgrims start, which is Ferrol, Ferrol. And then there's La Coruña, or you might also hear A Coruña, depending on if you're hearing it in Castellano or in Gallego. The route from La Coruña is not long enough to qualify for the Compostela. It's people do it often more as like a longer weekend trip. And I know I met people who did it in the last couple of days and they loved it. But the majority of people, want to do the minimum of the 100 kilometers. And so they start from Ferrol to get their Compostela. And I think from Ferrol, it's something officially like 114 kilometers. I feel like it's longer, but that's what they say. So obviously, if you're starting from Coruña, that's where you'll need to navigate to. And there is an airport there. I checked and there are only a couple daily direct flights, one or two from Madrid, from Barcelona. I didn't see any from Paris. I do believe London has one or two. And Ferrol has no airport. So my recommendation, if you are okay with it, is to actually fly into Santiago de Compostela. And why I say to fly into there is because a train or a bus there from any other part of Spain, let alone the rest of Europe, is going to take, like from Madrid, it's basically between 5.5 and 6 hours. So just a lot of train travel. I actually love train travel, but it's just a lot of train travel before starting the Camino. So what I actually did, I was in the south of France. I flew from Marseille to Madrid and then Madrid up to Santiago. And that was very easy. I don't even know if it was a full hour from Madrid. And I stayed overnight in Santiago. And then I went to Ferrol the next day and then stayed a full day in Ferrol because I wanted to explore it and I didn't want to start walking, immediately in the morning. And I think that's a great thing to do. And I will say, I totally understand if you don't want to see like the cathedral in Santiago before you've actually completed your Camino. I get it. If it were my first Camino, I probably would not have wanted to do that. I will say, if that's the case, I still would recommend potentially flying into Santiago and then just from the airport, which is, outside of the city center anyway, getting like a taxi or a bus to the train or bus station and then just going straight to Ferrol. And you could start walking even that same day. I'll talk more about that in a second, but I recommend spending a night in Ferrol. I think it's a really cool maritime city. It's got some amazing artwork. This graffiti in the style of Las Meninas, a very, very famous Spanish painting, and great seafood. Really, really cool vibe. Especially if the sun's out, everyone's by the water enjoying their cervezas. And so, yeah, I recommend Ferrol for sure. But you do have an option. So even if you stay in Santiago for a night and then go to Ferrol or jump from Santiago to Ferrol directly, you could technically start walking. There are places to stay if you're only looking to do 10 or 15 kilometers that first day. Even the first day that I did, which was to Neda, it was only, I think, 15 kilometers. And it was very easy. I don't even think there was anything uphill. The hardest thing about it was when it was kind of raining, some of the pathways out of the city got very slippery. But it was really, it was the least challenging day physically of that entire Camino. And there were people that must have done that because there are people that arrived at the albergue in Neda, I think still at like 9:30 p.m. So I'm guessing they got one of the later buses. There are multiple buses every day from Santiago into Ferrol. There are also a couple trains, but there are more buses. I'm guessing they just took the bus and started walking. You got to be careful with that, though. I don't think the problem is necessarily that it'll be physically challenging unless you are maybe very sleep deprived, jet lagged, whatever. It's more effect of finding a bed. There was, I think, only one bed free that like at the end of that night. So if you were a group of two and you're arriving, you wouldn't have had a place to stay. And there are other places in town, and I don't think it would be, it's a very suburban area. I'm sure you could get a taxi or maybe even Uber fairly easily if you had to go somewhere else, but it's something to keep in mind. Um, and the nice thing about flying into Santiago as well that I didn't mention is there are a lot more direct flights. There are multiple every day from Madrid, from Barcelona, from Paris, from London. But so in terms of options, that's just going to be your best bet. But I understand if you if you say I'm not touching foot in Santiago, but then and if you are able to get a flight into Coruña, there are very quick trains to Ferrol as well. So there are a couple different options. Let me know if you guys have any questions after listening to this or need any more specific information logistically, and or if you have just generally more questions about the Camino Inglés. And stay tuned for my upcoming video about every place I stayed on that Camino. Thanks, guys. See you soon, and of course, buen camino.